grant recipients, plagiarism and fraud in grant proposals and related research. Quick introduction. My name is Bob Kreutz. I've been with iThenticate for several years now, as has my colleague Greg Mathers, who's also going to be joining us today. And as far as agenda items, we're going to be talking about the current climate specific to plagiarism, the research ecosystem, and how our technology fits in to that ecosystem. Talk a little bit about the iThenticate technology specifically, recommendations for prevention, and finally we'll finish up with an opportunity for you to ask some questions, and hopefully we can provide some answers. A little bit about our company. Our company is called iParadigms. We are the global leader in plagiarism prevention. We offer an array of products for all walks, from students up to professional researchers. And as far as the volume of materials that we check over the course of a year, you can see under the stats and facts that there are quite a few manuscripts and related documents that are uploaded to our technology by leading publishers, research departments, government organizations, and individual researchers. So let's get into the current climate. You can see some key bullet points at the top of the page here. Growing scrutiny of published work, rising number of misconduct allegations and investigations, increased number of retractions, greater media attention, and today you'll see highlighted that we're going to focus specifically on some grant misconduct and fraud issues. But take a closer look at the graph, and you can see that the monumental increase over time in the number of retractions. And there's some speculation about what's behind this. I think that there's obviously increased exposure and visibility due to technology, available technology, both on the part of individuals accessing the internet and services like iThenticate and other plagiarism detection technology. But if you take a look at perhaps one of the most important pieces to us, on the bottom of the slide or the bottom of the chart here, you see the array of specific misconduct issues that resulted in the listed retractions. 11% fabrication and falsification, and then 17 and 16% plagiarism, 17 of that self-plagiarism. And in fact, we did, within the last year, produce a white paper on self-plagiarism. It's an increasing topic of interest within the research community, and we can certainly make that resource available to you as well. We do some of our own in-house research to try to determine the best way to present our technology and also to stay apprised of trending issues within the research community. You can see here just shy of 1,800 respondents were surveyed. You can see that these respondents were in a number of different industries, from government to technology, some researchers, some executives, professors, grad students, editors, etc. But some important stats that you see: 87% of respondents encounter plagiarism occasionally to regularly. So these numbers should speak to the increased visibility, again, of misconduct issues. 61% of respondents think plagiarism is increasing. As far as the primary reason why misconduct issues are perceived to be on the rise, 46% of respondents listed pressure to publish, which is something that anybody within academia should be aware of. Again, getting back to self-plagiarism, a hot button issue, 59% of respondents think self-plagiarism is a concern up to serious issue. I'm going to talk about a few misconduct case examples as well as media coverage. 4 examples, the first of which is going to be a National Science Foundation grant investigation that was conducted after an instance at Central Michigan University. The second, Department of Justice case against a DoD contractor. And over to media, we're going to break down a Nature article that deals with duplication in grant proposals. And finally, take a look at Retraction Watch, one of the more notable watchdogs for the research community. The first example I mentioned, Central Michigan University. Here's an example where a grant proposal was submitted to the National Science Foundation in 2004. Nearly $800,000 was awarded in 2005 to fund a project for up to 5 years. In October, Central Michigan University made a decision to reimburse nearly all of that funding after it was determined that the application had been plagiarized in multiple areas. So here's an example where we have an intensive investigation that lasted 2 years, countless man hours going into the investigation, creating dozens of reports and related documents. And really what I want to bring to light here is, again, the costs, sometimes not the tangible costs, but the costs of a misconduct investigation. Another point here is related to negative media exposure. And in this particular example, you see a screenshot of an article from a CMU publication. And this is particularly interesting because here you have the CMU community not only wondering why this example of misconduct was allowed to happen, but also raising some questions about Central Michigan University's ability to effectively manage monetary resources. So, you know, if they're making errors or if they have some policies that could be bolstered related to federal funds that are coming into the university, are there also other areas where you know, they're misallocating funds? And again, not making any judgments, but certainly saying that that's media exposure that no university wants. The second example that I bring to bear is a case that was argued by the Department of Justice. This was an example of a DoD contractor defrauding 6 government agencies, including NASA and the Air Force. And in this particular instance, you had a contractor who, at the initial stages of his efforts to solicit funds, did not make any errors, so submitted distinct grant proposals, but ultimately produced the same research for all agencies. So with appeals, this case was argued for more than 3 years before the U.S. government received a summary judgment, which is, I think, by all accounts, a successful outcome. However, here's another example where you have a significant amount of human resources involved, no recovery of funds provided, but taking solace in the fact that this government contractor will no longer be able to do business with the U.S. government. As an aside, this is an example of fraud that may have gone unnoticed due to the difficulties with cross-government agency communication. However, there are potential solutions that may arise in the future, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. Getting into media coverage, this is a Nature article specific to duplicate grant cases. And what they did in this article is highlight a specific misconduct instance where a Penn State professor accepted grants from both the Department of Energy and the National Science Foundation for the same research. And you can see the quote just below that from a former Inspector General at the National Science Foundation: "It's not a problem to apply for funds for the same research at different agencies, but it is illegal to use the funding if you're awarded that funding from both agencies." So something to think about as far as sending applications to multiple agencies for same research. So this professor was found guilty of misconduct, was forced to resign, just highlighting some of the negative repercussions that arise from these instances. But most importantly, within this article, we see the beginning of our political system beginning to weigh in on how federal funds, how taxpayer money is being allocated within the research community. So questions around checks and balances. Are we doing enough? Is there more that we can be doing? We'll see very shortly that there are some organizations that have certainly taken initiative, and there are other organizations that are exploring the same. And finally, as far as another example of media coverage, this is yesterday's news. We have a website called Retraction Watch that focuses on the research community specific to misconduct cases that result in retraction. This was a unique example in the sense that it was a healthcare consulting firm who advertises expertise in federal grants development. So one of their consultants, who has a bio on that particular organization's website, boasts of a successfully competing for a National Institutes of Health grant for the amount of $9 million. What the bio neglected to also include was the fact that the Office of Research Integrity, which is the investigative body, independent investigative body for National Institutes of Health, had determined that this consultant had falsified and fabricated material in the grant application, as well as 3 other previous grant applications. Interesting point here, this particular consultant researcher has a 30-year tenure. So this is a very prolific body of research that this person's produced, and the level of expertise certainly in question here. I did indicate that this, I believe, may have been an example where this particular consultant violated a one-year exclusion from the Office of Research Integrity, which would essentially mean that there was a sanction levied after misconduct was determined, which prohibited this particular person from doing government consultation or soliciting government funds for a specific period of time. And then finally, again, speaking to repercussions of misconduct issues, this healthcare firm indicates it's no longer working with this particular researcher. So with increased visibility of misconduct issues and growing concerns about exposure, the research community begins to look at technological solutions which could enhance editorial practices. So very quickly here, you see a list of government agencies and granting bodies taking advantage of the iThenticate plagiarism detection technology. One of our earliest adopters, National Science Foundation. The Department of Justice case that we used as an example just a moment ago was supported in the discovery phase by the use of iThenticate to compare research documents. Of course, there's a little bit of a cascade effect with the adoption of technologies like ours, and you'll see that here. Universities using iThenticate. Clemson adopted shortly after discovering that the National Science Foundation was using our technology. Central Michigan University on the left-hand side here adopted shortly after the misconduct issue that we highlighted earlier in the presentation. So you see some retroactive adoption, some proactive adoption. Central Florida adopted the iThenticate technology for investigations within the research office before extending access to both faculty members and graduate students across the university in hopes that they could lessen the amount of investigations. Wrapping up this particular portion of the presentation, if you take a look at the scholarly community, you could see that there's a very close relationship around different individuals and organizations that are taking advantage of the iThenticate technology. So we have universities and individual researchers who are producing grant proposals and related research, sending those to government and granting agencies in order to receive awards to fund the research, ultimately producing the research, and hopefully, as an end game, publishing in a prominent journal. And so you can see the interconnectivity with scholarly publishers with whom we are working at a great scale, both in terms of making the iThenticate service available to prominent scientific, technical, and medical publishers within their editorial process, in addition to accessing content from these publishers, exclusive proprietary content, and including that in our database so that all iThenticate users can compare manuscripts against it. So that said, I'm going to pass things along to my colleague Greg Mathers to tell you a little bit more about iThenticate.
So thanks, Bob. That was some great information about what's happening in today's research climate. So what I'd like to do now is talk to you a little bit about why some of these researchers and authors are using our service, and a little bit about the process itself. So iThenticate is a completely web-based technology that allows users to upload, check, and examine documents in just minutes. When you go to the system, you log in, you upload a document. We take a digital fingerprint of that document. We then compare that document to the database of fingerprints, which I'll get into in a minute. We then produce a similarity report, overview of matched content in the document to content in our content repositories. One of the big questions is when I speak with customers is, what do we search against? And so I'd like to talk a little bit about the various databases that we have. Our subscription content is what makes us so unique with the research community. Specifically, we have a database of academic content. Currently, we have 32+ million scholarly articles, ebooks, and conference proceedings in this particular database. We also have relationships with other content partners, EBSCOhost, Cengage, Gale, and PutTrack One, that provide us with about 125 million plus different content items. In addition to that, we have an internet database. We've been collecting content for about 15 years. So we have a huge cache of both archived and current internet content, about 34+ billion web pages right now. In addition to that, we also give users the ability to create their own database of content. So that would fill any voids of content that we might not already have in our databases. It's also a great way for customers to compare internal documents against themselves. So if you wanted to create a database of grant proposals, and then you could actually take other grant proposals and compare them against that database to check for similarities. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to take you to the website itself and show you a report. All right, so now we're inside my account. I'm going to go ahead and show you what a report looks like. So as you can see on the left-hand side here, it looks very similar to most email programs. I think it looks more similar to Outlook, but you'll see that I have a folder group called Publications. Within that folder group, I have two subfolders. One is ABC Journal, it's just a test folder, and then I have test docs. I'm going to jump into my test docs, and you'll see that I've uploaded some files, some documents to this test docs folder. Okay, and you'll see that all of these documents have a score that's been assigned to it. So what that indicates, that's called a similarity index score. And what that's telling you is that when we checked these documents, a certain percentage of text in those documents was found to match information in our content repositories. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into this OSA sample document. This is a great research document that I've uploaded. And you'll see that we are now in the document viewer section. Okay, so when you drill down a level, this is what you're going to see. You have this great visual report, very easy to read. On the left-hand side is my document. You'll see that I have a number 1 here because there's only one source that's been identified. It's an 89%er, and you'll see that all the text has been highlighted. Okay, so this is not the only match that we found. This just happens to be the most relevant match that the system has deemed in this particular report viewing mode. So we're going to go ahead and click on this little arrow right here because I want to show you that there are also many overlapping matches that have been covered up. But you can see them by just simply clicking on that arrow. And the reason you might want to check the overlapping matches is because maybe that one match right there is not the match that you're interested in. Okay, so you can choose your matches simply by clicking on the radio dial, which I'll do right here. You'll see that it's going to toggle to that report. And then if I want to drill down a level further, I can click on the full source view, and then I can see this match at this source right here. And you can see that the text is highlighted, and over here you'll see that also the text has been highlighted. Okay, if I want to go back, I simply click on the X, and it takes me back to my default view. I'd like to show you a couple of other resources on the website at this point. Okay, so this is our home page. So if you're a researcher or an author, let's say that you're just working on a couple of projects. If you need to check your documents, we give you this option right here, this authors and researchers option. You can click on that, and it's going to take you down to a page where you can actually purchase the service online. Okay, and you'll see that we give you quite a few options here. So if you want just to buy a single credit, you can do that, or you can buy up to 10 credits. Also in the resources page, we have some great training videos. So I clicked on resources, now on the training, and you can see that we put together a group of videos on the left-hand side here. Each of these videos are about 2 to 3 minutes in length, and they go over the various features of the service. Okay. Another question that I get asked by customers on a regular basis is, what do we search against? Do you have such and such journal in your databases? So we've actually created a way for customers to go to our homepage, the content section of our homepage, and they can actually search for a specific journal. You would just scroll down here and you'll see that there's a box right there, and you can type in the name of that journal, the author, the title, or the subject, and then hit search, and then it'll search our databases. This is also where you'll find some detailed information about the various information that's in our content repositories, which I went over earlier. So hopefully that helps you out. So I'm going to turn it back over to Bob now to finish up the presentation. Thank you all very much.
So thanks, Greg. In conclusion, we wanted to offer some recommendations, give you some things to think about as you review today's presentation. First of all, and some of this may sound very obvious to you, but first of all, practice careful research and note-taking. I think this is probably one of the key things that leads to misconduct issues. Misplacing notes, not indicating an attribution on a specific note. Important things for you to consider in terms of trying to mitigate some of these issues. No rules and definitions. So proper paraphrase, use of quotations, have an understanding of what constitutes self-plagiarism, or if you need to, and in fact, we'll get into this in a moment, but so time management, make sure you're effectively managing your time, because when you find yourself short on meeting deadlines, that does open you up to potentially making some errors and perhaps confusing some of your research and putting yourself in a precarious position. And then finally, I mentioned self-plagiarism just a moment ago. It's something that we've tried to tackle in the last few years so that we could provide some indication as to how this is defined. But this was an eye-opener for us in helping us to determine that the most important piece of determining what the expectations are of a given publisher, of a given granting agency, is reviewing the guidelines and taking advantage of available web resources. Um, so keep that in mind as you try to figure out what the requirements are for a given research project. And then finally, obviously, we're encouraging everybody within the research community who's not already taking advantage of the iThenticate software to do so. And we offer both individual options as well as organizational options. And the organizational option, of course, including a custom repository, which would allow you to compare internal documentation against other internal documentation that might not otherwise be included in our repository. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And again, we'll be sending out an email with you, including a link to the recording of today's presentation. Have a great day.